Read all about it. Extra, extra. Read all about it. Right, absolutely. The breakfast there, we are delivering 99.1 FM. This Tuesday morning, we're saying a very good morning to you. Wherever it is you are listening to us from, is another day for us to talk Nigeria and make sense of all of the happenings in and around it. Paper review right here on the station. Well, welcome to you. My name is Njideka Chisem Chinedu, anchor is here. Our analyst, Comrade Aloysius, that will join us later on. Before we begin this morning with the papers, just a quick reminder that our topic of discussion for today will focus on the burden of leadership. The burden of leadership, navigating the challenges in decision making. And this is in cognizance of what is going on as far as Anambra State is concerned, or what transpired as regards the former governor of the state, Echinwoke Mbadenuju, who was buried a few days ago. We will be looking at some of the claims and counterclaims and all of the assessments trailing his death as far as his stewardship is concerned. That will be after the Igbo News at 10 o'clock hour. Before then, let's begin with the first paper today.
The Guardian newspaper, major talking point here this morning. CJN seeks amendment for termination of most cases at appeal court. CJN seeks amendment for termination of most cases at appeal court. At the rider here, AGF cautions new sons against unprofessional conduct. Chief Justice of Nigeria, CJN, Olukayode Ariwola, has called on the National Assembly to amend laws and allow termination of most appeals at intermediary courts to reduce burden on the Supreme Court. Now, according to the CJN, from September last year to July this year, the Supreme Court received 1,271 cases consisting of motions and appeals. Out of these, he said, we heard, I'm quoting now, we heard 388 political appeals, 215 criminal appeals, and 464 civil appeals. Ariwola said during the period under review, the Supreme Court delivered 251 judgments. Out of these, 125 were political appeals, 81 were civil appeals, and 45 were criminal appeals. Okay, and a couple of things caught my interest when I went through this particular report. First is the number of appeals and cases received, and then when you put it in side by side with the ones that have been delivered, judgment has been delivered on, you find out that over 1,000 are still outstanding. So it also brings back the question of adequate manpower at the Supreme Court. Is that possibly why they have so much to be done? September to July under review, that's roughly 10 months. And in 10 months, barely a tiny fraction of the cases brought before the Supreme Court were dealt with. I also understand Ariwola's position as to what actually makes it to the Supreme Court. You know, it gets to the Court of Appeal and it is decided and ended there. And of course, it's a good move, but the big question will be, at the end of the day, does it give justice a chance? Does it give fairness a chance? Because we've seen cases where issues are brought before the Court of Appeal and they are decided on. But when you get to the Supreme Court, we have the Supreme Court judges have another decision on the same matter. And so at the end of the day, you find out that in some cases, it's a case of maybe the appeal court dealing with evidence available to it and disposing judgment, and at the end of the day there is something new that the Supreme Court may just look at and decide otherwise. And some persons have actually interpreted it as giving justice a fair chance, while some other persons would more often than not say the ones that have been sustained from the appeal to the Supreme Court, the ones that have been sustained at the Supreme Court, as this could have just ended at the appeal court. It was just a mere waste of court time and an academic exercise, and even the resources put into bringing that case before the Supreme Court. But right now, Comrade, good morning.
Good morning.
You are welcome. On The Guardian this morning, we are talking about the CJN's motion for cases to be decided, terminated at the appeal court, And according to The Guardian here, it says between September and July this year, the Supreme Court received 1,271 cases. And within the same period, the court has delivered judgment on 251 only. Why is that so?
Well, what the CJN said is just a pointer on the need for these far-reaching reforms we've been talking about in the judiciary. Because his position has its merits and demerits as well. Because somebody had cause to describe the appeal court as the black sheep of the judiciary before now, because of the kind of perceived miscarriage of justice which people witnessed at that court. Now, if you say that some cases shouldn't get to Supreme Court, you should now be sure of the caliber of people you have at the appeal court. And the Supreme Court also, which is saying that they are being overburdened, is part of also the challenge we talked about the other day. Why not decentralize this Supreme Court? There are so many judges, eminent jurists, that deserve to be Supreme Court judges, but they don't get there because of this issue of quota and tribalism and what have you. If we decentralize the Supreme Court in such a way that there will be more judges and people of impeccable integrity, the essence of having Supreme Court as the highest court of the land is to prevent a perversion of justice, travesty of justice. When somebody is aggrieved that he didn't get justice and the true meat of the matter was not dispensed at the appeal court, he now has a final chance to prove his case at the Supreme Court. So if you deny such person outright, it means it's already a miscarriage of justice.
So you're looking at two things here. I want to guess that you wouldn't have had any problem with the suggestion if we can actually count on the integrity of the judges.
Yes.
The remaining few judges, you wouldn't have a problem with it.
Exactly.
Okay. The question of decentralization, I actually wanted to ask if this is the kind of holistic reform we are talking about, just like you mentioned earlier on. At the time that Joe made his exposure, we talked about decentralizing this work at the Supreme Court. For example, why can't we have more Supreme Court at the regional level? Yes. Just like we have the appeal court divisions. We have over 20 appeal court divisions cut across different regions. But I've also looked at this current scenario. It's still not enough. I mean, the other time, the appeal court president, Justice Monica, was also lamenting that they are short of personnel at the appeal court. And at the appeal court, to have over 80 judges is still not enough. Even during election, the number is further depleted and they have to move to adjudicate election matters. So I'm just wondering, what number of judges are we looking at, whether it's High Court, Appeal Court, Supreme Court? If, for example, we are maintaining the current status quo of Supreme Court judges, the number is supposed to be 21 or thereabout. What number are we looking at that should be enough? Appeal Court has over 80 judges, still not enough. So what number should we be looking at in terms of decentralizing or even increasing the number of judges?
We are talking about a federation like Nigeria where you have estimated over 200 million people. We are talking about a country that has 36 states, including Abuja. Multi-ethnic, with so many diversities. And in this country, you only talk of 21 Supreme Court judges, which sometimes gets depleted to 10 or 11. So, and the man is saying so that we won't be overburdened. So how can you compare? Then the appeal court judge is not about 80, this kind of thing. Why does it mean that we don't have capable judges, or because of the same politics that makes it impossible to engage them? There are people who can assume these roles, but they are not engaged because of the system we are talking of. So ordinarily, for the Supreme Court, we should be talking about that same number of 80 or thereabouts. Then that of appeal court, you don't need anybody to tell you that it's still small. About 3 times of that number can at least handle the multifarious cases besorting every court across the land. Everywhere, litigations are here and there. When you talk about civil matters, you talk not to talk about criminal matters. When Nigeria, some people's corruption and crime and what have you is on the rise on daily basis. And these things, you see the prisons that are populated everywhere and there across different parts of Nigeria. All these things, like I said, that constitute part of the criminal justice system in Nigeria need to be addressed. More so when civil matters come into these things and not only civil criminal matters. So there is need to expand, to reform and expand all these things.
I wonder who will lead that conversation. But I also noticed that he didn't speak directly to this issue of, the depletion of the Supreme Court judges. He didn't speak directly. It seems he was trying to make reference to it, but he wasn't direct. And I'm going to read it the way he was quoted by the Guardian. He said, "The year scorecard is impressive, fascinating, and appreciable in view of the unpleasant events that dotted the legal year, especially the alternating number of judges on the Supreme Court bench, which has to do with some challenges that could not easily be surmounted by one arm of government alone." He was trying to make a reference to what perhaps could actually be causing the delay, but he was not quite specific. I would have thought that could have been an opportunity to educate Nigerians when we're having this number. The time we talked about that teacher, I made reference to the fact that sometimes the presidency might not really approve, the number might be given, will not approve. I don't know whether that's what he's talking about, but he was not quite explicit when it comes to making us understand what is going on.
Yes, when you look at the statement, not being explicit is purely intentional. His intention about it. So, because he knows what is actually the problem in the system. But sometimes
I think
also,
he's exonerating himself because he said he's not just one arm of government.
Of course. Okay, so and you see what is playing out now. After they denied that is the other day, we've not heard anything about this replacement of those judges again. So which tells you that the whole thing they have benched it again, and before you know it, they started a new legal year, which is this rubbing of this sand, and we enter next year proper, and the problem continues to linger on. It shouldn't be so, because I know that we have the manpower. It's only the system to pick these people. You cannot say that we don't have a sound judges that can be elevated to those places. They are there in their numbers. But the Nigerian factor is always rearing its ugly head in almost everything we do.
Comrade, I'm just wondering why this Nigerian factor is rearing its ugly head, because last time I checked, we actually do know these people, and like you confirmed, they are there waiting to serve. Is it a case of whatever they are going to earn being a problem? Why exactly is there so much delay? I remember the last time we talked about this, we experienced a situation where there is possibly a system where as one person is retiring, there is a replacement. If somebody dies, there is an immediate replacement as against a pile up. Now I'm wondering, and I also want to find out, is there some sort of recruitment period? Is there like a batch thing going on? Is that why there is this delay, waiting for the time to come or something of that nature?
A lot of factors, depending on bureaucracy, depending on the person in charge at a particular point in time. Because let me tell you, the truth of the matter is that, like the filling of these slots, if the CJN is actually disposed to that, immediately before that valedictory of that attitude, he's the one that would have called for these things from NJC immediately without even waiting to be reminded. He should be the one calling on NJC to forward the list immediately. But sometimes all these things happen. Who the buck stops at his table at a particular point in time may be responsible for some of these things. But if it is a forward-looking person that wants the system to grow, he's the one that will drive the process.
I mean, we have the AGF there that is supposed to be maybe advising the president even. I don't know what's going on there.
It is the same thing everywhere. I was discussing with somebody this morning, and he drew my attention to a report in Anambra that so many people that are retired in the service are lying, waiting for their files to be attended to, because Anambra State doesn't have a substantive auditor general. Auditor general. There is vacancy in the seat of auditor general, and nobody has been appointed after the last person retired. So many people who also retired and need to their files to be